Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're playing detective and cracking open a scientific case file that's been cold for decades, all about one of America's most famous wetlands. So let's get right to the heart of it. The big question is this: is America's largest blackwater swamp basically a giant sealed-off bathtub? I mean, for generations, that's exactly what everyone thought. But as it turns out, there have been some clues bubbling up that suggest something totally different is going on right under the surface.
All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the old myth. Then, the first clues that something was off. We'll follow the isotope detective story, check out this idea of a lagging pulse, and finally, figure out why any of this really matters.
Okay, part one, the isolated swamp myth. This is the official story that stood for years, this idea of two completely separate worlds. So, for as long as anyone can remember, the story was pretty simple. You've got the Okefenokee swamp on top and the massive Floridan aquifer down below. And even though they're neighbors, the official line was that they never, ever mixed. Two completely separate systems living side by side but never touching.
And the reason for this separation? Well, geologists pointed to this one thing, a thick, dense layer of clay and sand called the Hawthorne Formation. Think of it like a perfectly sealed concrete floor. It was seen as this totally impenetrable barrier, the bottom of the bathtub, making sure not a single drop could get from the swamp down into that really important aquifer.
And get this wasn't some old-timey theory people forgot to update. No way. This idea was so locked in that it was still being stated as fact in official documents as recently as 2024. I mean, this was the official accepted truth. Okay, part two. Now we get to the good stuff, the first cracks in the theory. This is where the official story starts to fall apart. You have to go back to the 1990s, when a few scientists started finding some really puzzling clues that just didn't make any sense. So the whole thing kicked off when they found water deep down in the aquifer with this weird chemical signature. It just wasn't what it was supposed to look like. And right away, two totally different theories popped up to try and explain it. And this kicked off a huge debate. On one side, you had Theory 1, the ancient rainfall idea. This camp said the weird signature was from, get this, tropical cyclone rain that fell during the last ice age, like 20,000 years ago. But for that to be true, the swamp had to be sealed. On the other side was Theory 2, modern leakage. This group argued, no, it's not ancient water, it's modern swamp water leaking down through cracks in that supposedly impenetrable clay layer. A real scientific showdown. Part 3, the isotope detective story. So, to finally settle this debate, scientists needed a smoking gun. And they found it by looking at the water's unique chemical fingerprint. Okay, so they use this really cool technique involving something called stable water isotopes. Here's the simple version. When water, say, sits in a swamp and evaporates under the sun, its chemical makeup changes just a tiny bit. It becomes isotopically heavy. You can think of it like a flavor or a natural tracer that tells you exactly where that water has been. It's a fingerprint. So first, they established a baseline. And yeah, just as you'd expect, the deep aquifer water was isotopically light. And the swamp water, totally different. It had that really distinct heavy signature from all the evaporation. So far, so good, no surprises. But here's the million-dollar question. What would the water directly underneath the swamp look like? I mean, if that clay layer was a perfect seal, the water below it should look exactly like the rest of the aquifer water, right? It should be light, totally untouched by the heavy swamp water right on top of it. Well, it didn't. Not even close. The results were absolutely stunning. The water under the swamp was a dead giveaway. It was a mixture, and it was mostly made up of that heavy water from the swamp. We're talking like 80% swamp water. This wasn't just a hint. This was the science shouting that something was leaking. And in some spots, it was even more extreme. The data showed that up to 95% of the aquifer water right under the swamp actually came from the swamp. 95%. This was it. The first undeniable smoking gun that completely blew the sealed bathtub theory out of the water. Okay, part 4. Now, one piece of evidence is great, but 2, that's how you really solve a case. This next clue shows the connection isn't just chemical, it's physical. They found a lagging pulse. So, the researchers switched gears from chemistry to physics.
What they did was they took years and years of daily water level data, one set of data from the swamp's surface, and another from monitoring wells drilled deep into the aquifer right below it. Then they just compared them over time. And what they found was just beautiful. It was so clear. Whenever a big rainstorm hit and the water level in the swamp went up, guess what? A little while later, the water level in the deep aquifer also went up. It wasn't immediate. It was more like a delayed echo. A physical pressure pulse was literally pushing its way down from the swamp into the aquifer. And that delay was pretty consistent. It took about a month for the change to be fully reflected down below. So no, it's not like an open pipe where water is just pouring through. But that lag time is perfect proof of a slow, steady connection through a leaky layer. It's not a seal. And boom, there it is, the second smoking gun. So now you've got two totally separate lines of evidence. You've got the chemical fingerprint from the isotopes, and you've got this physical pressure pulse. And they both point to the exact same thing. The swamp and the aquifer are connected. The old model, it was officially toast. Okay, last part. Why the leak matters. We've solved the mystery, right? The swamp is leaky. Case closed. But so what? Why is this such a big deal? Well, it matters because it completely flips our whole understanding of the region's water system on its head. We have to throw out that old idea of a sealed bathtub. The new reality is that the Okefenokee is more like a leaky reservoir. It's actively and constantly feeding water into the aquifer below. And that changes everything. Suddenly, the health of the swamp is directly tied to the drinking water for millions of people. Think about it. If something like, say, a proposed mine nearby starts pumping tons of water out of the aquifer, it could lower the water level. That creates a pressure difference, basically turning the leak into a straw that could start pulling water out of the swamp. And during a drought, this connection can make things way worse, accelerating water loss from the swamp and damaging this incredible ecosystem. So this discovery isn't just about solving some cool scientific puzzle. It hands us a brand new and pretty urgent responsibility. Now that we know for sure that these two incredible resources are connected, how do we make sure we protect them both?